So you find yourself binge eating 3 to 5 times a week, and you've been searching for the cure to end binge eating. So you discover intuitive eating. Just listening to your body, ending binge eating, ending ravenous hunger, being one with your hunger cues. Just eating when you want, but not overeating. Just listening to your body. And you try to start intuitive eating, and then you start to overeat. You start to eat all the chocolates. You start to overeat on all the brownies. You start to overeat all the pizzas, all of your usually fear foods. And then you think to yourself, okay, maybe I'm broken. Maybe I think there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong with intuitive eating. So if that was you, then let me introduce myself. My name is Jonathan. I'm a dietitian that supports people who are struggling with binge eating. And let's talk on the topic on intuitive eating. Is intuitive eating a good way to end binge eating urges? So before we tackle the question, is intuitive eating helpful for binge eating? What is intuitive eating? So intuitive eating was popularized by Evelyn Tribble and Elise Reich. So pardon me if I'm really pronouncing their names wrong. And they have an amazing book on intuitive eating. So intuitive eating isn't about just eating what you want and when you want and not overeating. It's about also rejecting diet mentality, respecting your body, making peace with food, and so much more. There are lots of intuitive eating principles. So let's get straight to the answer. Is intuitive eating helpful for binge eating? Yes and no. And it's a really strange answer, but yes is if you're new to binge eating in a way that like this cropped up maybe a week ago, you haven't been struggling with binge eating and restricting for many months, even years, and maybe you're only having like one binge episode a week, then intuitive eating would be helpful. Know that intuitive eating would not be helpful in most cases, from the research suggesting, is that intuitive eating might not be helpful if you're struggling with binge eating episodes 3 to 5 times a week. You've been struggling with binge eating for many months, maybe even years. And the reason why intuitive eating might not be helpful for you if you're in that category is because when we struggle with binge eating and then restricting, binge, restrict, what's the one thing you want to do after a binge eating episode? You feel guilty, you feel embarrassed, you feel shameful. You promise to yourself you're going to skip breakfast. I'm going to make up for all the calories I've eaten in the binge. I'm not going to eat a big lunch, and then I'm going to try to just eat as little as possible to reverse what I've eaten. And then because of that, you're having intense urges to overeat because your body's really smart. It doesn't want to starve. It will get its calories somewhere. So it's going to ramp up your hunger cues. It's going to ramp up the ghrelin. And then you have a binge eating episode. So this is this terrible cycle of the binge restrict cycle. And the longer you're in this binge restrict cycle, your self-esteem levels go lower and lower and lower. But what's also important is that the longer you're in this binge restrict cycle, not eating, feast and famine, not eating for a period of time and then overeating for a quick period of time, then our hunger cues get used to this pattern. So we don't feel hungry in the morning, we get used to this pattern. But all of a sudden in the evening, you get this extreme ravenous hunger out of nowhere. So intuitive eating, listening to your hunger cues and being one with your body isn't helpful if you've been struggling with binge eating for a long period of time because your hunger cues are dysregulated. So if you're starting intuitive eating and you've been struggling with binge eating maybe 3 to 5 times a week, you jump onto intuitive eating bandwagon. I'm going to listen to my body and see how I get on. And then you find yourself not feeling hungry in the morning. And then, okay, I'm getting this craving for 5 pizzas and 2 boxes of onion rings all of a sudden. I'm listening to my body, and then the longer you're on this cycle, then you're really going to struggle with intuitive eating. So what can you do if you're struggling with dysregulated hunger cues and you feel like you can't really trust your hunger cues at the moment? So there's this thing that we can do to re-regulate our hunger cues. Because remember, as I said earlier, our hunger cues can get used to a certain pattern. So in our minds, we know that breakfast is roughly 8 o'clock, around that time. Lunch is 12 o'clock, dinner is like 6 o'clock. But our guts don't know that. Our guts don't have eyes. Our guts cannot sense when breakfast is, when 8 o'clock, that's breakfast time, 12 o'clock's lunchtime. It'll only sense what time is to eat when food is coming in, essentially. So if you're eating nothing all in the morning most of the times, and then you're eating tons of food in the evening, then it'll get used to this pattern. So what we need to do to re-regulate our hunger cues is to start this thing called mechanical eating. So mechanical eating is training your gut, your stomach essentially, to get used to this pattern. Like, okay, this is when to eat. I'm going to increase a little bit of my hunger cues there. Okay, there's another time I'm going to eat. I'm going to increase my hunger cues there. I'm going to increase my hunger cues there. So essentially, mechanical eating is eating every 3 to 4 hours. So what that would look like in practice is to have breakfast, mid-morning snack, lunch, mid-afternoon snack, dinner, and an evening snack. And it might seem like a lot of food, but in reality, is it actually a lot of food, or are you struggling with portion distortion? Feast or famine? You don't really know what a normal, quote-unquote normal, decent portion looks like. So starting mechanical eating can train yourself to get used to this smaller portion, in relatively compared to a binge, a smaller portion in regular amounts. So you're training your body to get used to, like, okay, I know my mind knows that 8 o'clock roughly is breakfast time, but my gut doesn't know that. So I'm going to tell my gut, okay, breakfast time's here, and then snack time is mid-morning, and then lunch time is here. And it's important to know there's a hunger scale. So 0 being extremely hungry, like ravenously hungry, and 10 out of 10 being extremely full, Christmas dinner full, where you feel really sick to the point. So try to be around 7 out of 10. So let's say you had a binge last night, and then in the morning, you feel like a 4 out of 10. So you have breakfast, now you're a 7 out of 10. And then mid-morning, you feel like, okay, maybe I'm a 5 out of 10. I'm going to have a little snack. And then now, okay, that's all right. I'm going to feel a 7 out of 10. And then lunchtime comes, you're a 3 out of 10. Let's top that up to be like a 7 out of 10. So getting used to this hunger cues. So you're telling your body, lunch is here, dinner is here, snacks are here. This is what normal hunger and fullness should feel like. Comfortable hunger and fullness should feel like. So mechanical eating can help re-regulate your hunger cues. And then maybe long-term, you could start to look back into intuitive eating. So I hope you found this episode helpful, and you can check the links in the description to how I can help you get rid of binge eating urges, and just start to live your life to the fullest. So there's the normal eating blueprint, how to become a normal eater blueprint. There's a hunger regulation webinar series, hunger regulation ebooks, and my main course, which is the 30-day binge reboot. So check that all out, and I'll see you in the next episode.